Howdy y'all, you got the Bulldog on the channel. I was testing this truck out here and I thought this would be a good opportunity to run through the basics of checking the starter circuit. Now, everybody knows check the battery. You know, that's pretty obvious. This is beyond that because it had a battery clamp broken. So we got some vice grips clamped on it up there temporary while we're doing our other checks. There is more wrong with it than that. But I'm down here at the starter now, and I want to show you the bare bones basics of checking a starter. This one is turned upside down, so it is very easy to get to. It is very easy to show, because most of the time the starter solenoid is on top of the starter, and it's over in that area up against the block, and it's very difficult to show somebody. Now, this back wire coming in here, this is the battery cable. It should always have a constant 12 volt supply of power into the starter. This smaller wire here, that's the solenoid wire, the signal wire. That comes from basically your ignition switch, and it's what gets power turned on whenever you're cranking the vehicle. When you turn the key all the way, that's what gets the power. This is a switch. It's a great big gigantic switch. When you apply power to this wire, it closes a contact inside here that takes power from here and puts it into your starter here. Now let's pull this cover off. Come on, gimme. You see those two contacts? If you short from here to here, the engine's going to crank. What we have on this application, I've already tested it, is I have no power coming from the key switch to here. But we can take our test light, and I'm checking for power, and I've got power there, see? Now, you check for power at this eyelet right here or anywhere along this line, and that gives you an idea that you got power coming from here. But you also want to check for power here on this stud and make sure it's actually getting in to the solenoid. Now, if you have power here while a helper holds down the starter, you also want to do that where you're testing on the wire and on the stud to make sure power gets into the part. If you have power on this wire and the starter's not cranking, check for power here. Check to make sure this switch inside is making contact, and then you'll have power here. If you have power on this stud, check this wire here to see if power is actually going into the starter. Sometimes it's this connection. These are Ford starters. They like to burn up this wire right here. I've seen it multiple times on these Ford starters. I don't know why they have more trouble with it than anything else, but they do. But that's the basics of checking a starter circuit. If you don't have power here, then you need to go further. You have issues in the ignition switch possibly. Now it also has a neutral safety switch. That's a safety device, hence the name neutral safety switch, where it will not start in any other gears but park or neutral. Now, if you're not getting power down to that starter to signal the starter to crank, then you're looking at something up here in the vehicle. Your neutral safety switch, like we discussed, usually is down on the transmission now. Sometimes it's up here in the shifter, but anyway, that has to be good. Try shifting it into different gears. Put it into neutral and see if it'll start there. That'll tell you that that neutral safety switch might be bad. It might have the shifter where it's not going all the way up into park. That is a common problem on these Ford trucks. The ignition switch. There are different wiring diagrams you can get to look and see if you're getting signal where it's supposed to be. Okay, since we don't have switched power going down to the starter, we come up here to the top. This one has a starter relay that goes right here. And I checked. I didn't have a wiring diagram to start with, so I just check and I find good power coming here. And the other one will go to the starter. Well, I check I have good power coming into one side of the relay and I have nothing on the other. This good power comes from the switch. When you turn the key to start position, there's power right here. And when you let off it, it goes away. That's what it's supposed to do. The ground on this side is controlled by whatever safety switch this truck has. Probably down there on the transmission. It's telling it it's not in park or neutral, so it won't allow a ground for the circuit to complete and for the truck to start. So we're going to go back down underneath of it and see if we can find out why. I've tried shifting it all over the place and it doesn't make a difference up here on the column. So we most likely got a bad switch. We'll find out. Okay, it's been a few days. My boss did some diagnostic to this. I was working on other things. We got back to the point where I could work on it. He'd already found, the general area where it was. It's in the wiring harness between the computer and the transmission. That's why it won't start. Nothing to do with the starter. What we got is somebody worked on it and they did not get the wiring harness put back in place where it goes up across the fender. And here's the result of that. Nice heat shielding and everything, but it had set on the exhaust manifold and wore a hole in it right here. And the result is this. The entire harness, every wire is cooked. It is all stuck together. Can I fix it? Yes. Should I fix it? No. They have already discontinued this harness. Well, no, they didn't. I don't think they discontinued it, but nobody has it or something like that. I don't know. He does the parts most of the time. He was searching for the whole harness and it is not available. So we're gonna look around and see if we got something used maybe, but this is, yeah, second time in a few days where we have to do a whole harness. And this is the transmission harness. It's not too bad to get out. It goes up to the computer and then down the downstream O2 sensors, and it runs back up to the left front fender. Kind of long, snaky, but not a huge deal. Both speed sensors to the transmission. Okay, so a new harness is not available, so we got this used one out of salvage yard. Unfortunately, it is out of one that's 2 years newer and it is completely different. So I'm breaking out the soldering gun, and fortunately I've got another harness. You remember that Ford truck that I put the wiring harness on to the rear? Well, maybe you don't. I don't know if I videoed that or not. But we had found a new harness, sold it to the customer for like $75, and we made a profit on it. There's the whole thing. This truck, a couple years older, you can't get this harness at all. Not a new one anyway. And we ordered a used harness, and of course it was the wrong one. I just showed you that. But I looked online. You can get a bunch of used ones on eBay. They had a big black mark on the heat shielding here, all in the same spot, according to the pictures. So this is a very common problem. So that's why they wanted $300, $400, $500 for used harnesses for this truck. Now, from the dealer, $75. Hundreds of dollars and can't even get it. Kind of speaks to the commentary on what's going on in the world right now. This isn't new for me because I'm a Gen Xer. We remember when Walmart didn't carry groceries and closed at 10 o'clock. We remember when you couldn't just walk into a store and pick up the item that you wanted and walk out. You always had to go in there and order it and wait. I know there's a lot of people that if they see this video, they're going to say, well, obviously you can get one somewhere. So you got to find one somewhere. Because that's the mentality that we've grown to be accustomed to. We've been spoiled in the last 25 years by on-demand delivery and all this kind of stuff. It's not the case. This is actually normal, where you can't get some things and have to make do on your own, and where you have to order something and wait for days and days on end to get it because there's like one supplier. It's just how it is. Anyway, I have to fix this now. I don't have much of a choice. So I'm going to try to cabbage the good wires off this harness here. Hopefully, since it's still a Ford, it'll be the same gauge and I'll be able to find some of the same colors to keep this one more or less accurate to the wiring diagram, because the last thing you want is to be fixing a wiring repair in 5 years and probe in somewhere and somebody put a red wire in where a green and green go. It helps people like me down the line if you put something on there that's at least close. You know, they'll have to take the whole harness apart and, oh, somebody's been in here already. Now the point of this repair is to not have this happen again, so it's going to get pulled back from the exhaust manifold. But this is a very common problem, since even used they want $100 for these harnesses, and you know, it's only years that fit. Nice. Great. Okay, I got it all peeled apart, everything. I'm going to replace every single wire for about 6 inches at least, minimum. But I've got it peeled back quite a ways because I want to stagger my length. That way I don't have a big bundle of heat shrink in one spot. All right, this is tedious stuff. I'm about a third of the way through. You see I'm staggering the heat shrink on both ends, and I'm putting a long section in here. I might end up going longer because I'm running into some crispy stuff. Clear down here, this section that was bad was about this long, so I'm getting well away from it on both ends. Okay, got a bunch of staggered heat shrinks here and all different colors. Now I'm going to bundle it all up, put a little bit of tape on it, and put looming back on the whole thing, and try to find some kind of a heat shield to put over it. I think they sell some at O'Reilly's or something that, you know, folds over with some Velcro. That'll stop this from happening again, maybe. Probably not. This is the cheapest one I found online here. This is, you know, eBay, $300. Now look at this. Burned up in the same spot. Big old black mark on it. So it's going to look the same way if you peel it all apart. It just hasn't burned in two yet. That's why I ended up having to fix it. And that's why they're so expensive. You can't find them. It's also part of the reason why they don't sell it new, because once you're fixing it. Okay, I waited until Monday because I wasn't going to try to put it all back in. That was Friday night, way late. But I did get all this done. Put looming back over the whole thing and taped it from one end to the other. But you see this heat shielding, I had to cut it and it was already frayed. We ordered some heat shielding from O'Reilly's, but it's the same stuff that's here that's solid. So that doesn't do us any good. We ordered some stuff online that loops over and has Velcro. And yeah, I've got other stuff that I can do today. It'll be Wednesday before we get that other stuff. So I can put it all back together. I'd just rather not. and we'll see what the rest of the day goes. I got a starter to put on. I got to take his Kia and stretch it out with a come along and see if I can make the wheels straight again. And I've got other things to do, so we'll see if I put this back in. I can put it back in and test it, and it's as long as I don't put the fender well back in, I'll be able to put that stuff on later. Okay, we got the wiring harness all reinstalled, and I put a metal clamp around it. Of course, we waited and got some aluminumized heat shielding with Velcro on it, put it around that thing where it goes, put a loop around it, bolted it to the back of the head so it's that far away from the exhaust manifold. Now, let's make sure it starts. All right, that's got that one taken care of. Just goes to show you, something as simple as a no start or no crank, you'd think, you know, starter, solenoid, something along those lines would be the most obvious. It could be like that. It's not often, but obviously this is a problem since we couldn't even find a wiring harness. Not worth the money anyway, not with damage right where we have damage. But a little bit of patience, and I was able to fix what she had, get it fixed up to where it's not going to do it again, and get everything back together. Yeah, it's not cheap, but worth the money. Like, comment, subscribe, hit your little bell notification, share it all around. We'll talk to you later.